This is Radio TV Phono Nut, and I hope everyone had a nice Thanksgiving holiday. And while everybody else is at China Mart fighting over the 50-inch 4K TV for $89.95 that will probably go out in 6 months, I decided just to hang around the house and try to get some things done. And one of the things on my agenda is to fix this little Bulova pocket transistor radio, probably from the early 60s. It could even be late 1950s. It kind of has that look to it. This belongs to a friend who asked me to get it going for him. And this thing looks like it's been well cared for. It's not all scratched up and beat up and chipped up like most of these are that I find. And of course, this is our volume control and our tuning knob here. It does have the civil defense markings at 640 and 1240 kC. That's what you were to tune to in the event of a nuclear attack. And those markings were required on all radios sold in the USA, I believe, from 1953 until 63. But some of them had them after that. Now here's the odd feature about this radio. This is our power switch, and it has off, speaker, and earphones. So this is not one that automatically cuts the speaker when you plug the earphone in. You have to flip the switch to earphone. Now the problem with that is if you didn't have an earphone plugged in and accidentally flip the switch to the earphone position, the radio would still be on, but you wouldn't know it, and you'd run your batteries down. One thing about this radio, it doesn't take a standard 9-volt transistor battery. It takes some weird 5.2 volt battery, and it gives the Mallory part number there. And I don't even know if that battery is even still available or not. If it is available, it probably cost an arm and a leg, so we might have to look into more modern possibilities there. I know some of these radios ran off of a 9-volt battery that looks similar to a AA battery, and I think those are still around, but once again, they're high as a cat's back, and on those I've often modified them to take a regular 9-volt battery, but I don't know what we'll do in this case. The battery terminals are corroded up, but we can sand those down, and then we can apply power from our DC power supply and see where we stand with this. Okay, we've got the juice connected. Let's flip it on and see what happens. Doesn't sound like anything's happening. Okay, we have our milliamp meter connected. I just want to see what the current draw is of the radio. I'm betting it's probably not going to be anything at all, but let's see. Applying power, and we're not getting a darn thing here, so most likely the trouble is possibly a bad power switch or something in the power input circuit, broken wire from one of the battery contacts or something like that. Even on the 2 milliamp scale, we're not getting anything. It's totally DOA. Here's the chassis, and as you might expect, very compact. And yeah, they've got this thing sealed up really well. They have wax in all of the IF cans to prevent tampering with the adjustments. And that's probably a good idea, seeing as how some people like to be screwdriver happy with these. But if somebody really wanted to turn them bad enough, that wax wouldn't deter them any. Alright, these battery terminals are still not making good contact. Going to have to do some major cleaning and scraping and rehabbing and what have you with those, but jumped our power directly to the set, and as you can hear, we have activity. Nowhere near peak performance, but at least we're receiving a radio station that's wide open and on one of the stronger stations. Pretty much all I get across the dial besides that is a lot of whistling and oscillations and We're receiving all of the local stations, but as you can hear, a lot of oscillation and other undesirable effects going on here. But more than likely, all of the transistors are still good, or otherwise we wouldn't even be receiving stations, so that's a good sign. And most of these early Japanese electrolytic capacitors, especially the cheaper no-name brands that were often found in these little pocket radios, those capacitors are mostly garbage by now. Alright, I'm pulling caps and checking them as I go just for entertainment value. They're all going to get replaced. This is a 30 microfarad reading 68 microfarads, so it's way up there. Now, I don't believe that's what's causing our trouble. I'm looking for something that's dried out that reads either 0 or pretty well close to 0. But these are going to get replaced anyway. But like I may have already said before, you have to be real careful when working on these, because you're packing a 6 transistor chassis in this little bitty circuit board, and it's very easy to screw something up, and we want to try to avoid that if at all possible. Now we're getting into the type of failure that I anticipate. This is a 10 microfarad capacitor, and it's only reading 1.6, and it's sort of flipping around a little bit, so this one's pretty much dried out. And I'm pretty sure the other one right here next to it is also dried out. Okay, we're moving along. There was a resistor standing up right next to that blue capacitor there. It was actually connected in parallel with that capacitor. Well, the resistor snapped off, and of course the one I have as a replacement is physically too big, so I had to attach it to the foil side of the circuit board. Hopefully the back cover will go on the radio. If it doesn't, we'll have to find a smaller replacement. And doing some more looking, looks like we've got a couple more electrolytics to replace, and this thing is kind of a jumbled up mess, to say the least. And that little small axial lead capacitor in front of the volume control knob, that looks like the coupling capacitor for the volume control. So if that one were open, that would explain the weak audio. And it's supposed to be 5 microfarad, and you can see the results here. So we'll just replace that with a 4.7 microfarad. Looks like as it cools down from the soldering iron, it's starting to drop down. So yeah, this thing's dried out just like I thought it would be. Well, that's better. I'm picking up some out-of-town stations, and I'm not having to turn the volume up as loud as before, and we're not getting all of the oscillations, so I think we're about 95% done here. The other 5% is going to be dealing with this battery situation. I'm going to have to get on the internet and try to see what I can find out about if there's even a battery still available like what this radio originally used, and if so, how much. And then we need to see where we're going to go from there. We may just have to come up with something entirely different, because I don't imagine he's going to want to pay $20-something for a battery for this, and it could very well cost that much, if one's even still available, and I wouldn't blame him for not wanting to pay that much. I certainly wouldn't want to pay that much.
What did I not see when he was playing that everybody else saw?
I remember years ago I was looking for a 67.5 volt battery for one of those portable tube sets from the 50s, and it just so happened the local parts house had one. But I forget what they wanted for it, something like $47 or something, and I told them they were out of their mind. I think I ended up making a battery out of 9-volt batteries from a dollar store. Okay, this uses a 5.2 volt battery, and our Mallory part number is TR164R. So we'll just have to use our friend Google and see what we can find out about that number. Okay, did a little online research, and the original battery is a mercury battery, which hasn't been made in years due to environmental reasons. However, there is an alkaline equivalent that's currently made. It's about $14 and some change. I haven't ordered one yet. I'll have to speak to the owner and see if he wants me to order one, or does he want to order one, or what do we want to do here. But anyway, it's a 6-volt battery, which of course is a little bit higher in output than the original mercury cell, but it's not high enough that it will cause harm to the radio. Actually, it might work a little bit better. And those batteries are commonly used in older cameras and photographic equipment. Of course, I really wasn't aware of that because I'm really not a camera guy, but that's the story. A battery that will work in this is still available. It's about 14 and some change. And of course, this would not be a radio that I would use on the regular basis, seeing as how the battery is so expensive. It'd be just one to have just to say that it works, and I wouldn't leave the battery in it at all times, or else we're going to have corroded battery terminals like what we had in this one, or should I say we could possibly have corroded battery terminals if the old battery were to leak, and that's highly possible. And with that said, we need to do something about these corroded terminals. I need to remove them and do a really good job at sanding them and polishing them up, and then maybe they'll be good to go again. I had to remove this fat 1K resistor that I had across the foil side of the circuit board because the back cover wouldn't snap in place. Then I tried to put a 1K and a 470K in series, although physically smaller, but not small enough, because the back still wouldn't snap on. So I just was able to fit a 1K ohm resistor in there in place of the 1500 ohm. I tested it, and it seems to work just as well either way. And now the back cover will snap on. And you can see where I installed the resistor here. I was able to sandwich it down in there. And the only really problem now is when I turn the tuning knob, you can hear it scraping on something, and I think it's on one of the capacitors that I put in there. And I'm sorry, but it's just going to have to be that way because that capacitor is physically bigger than what came out of it, and there's really not a whole lot I can do about it. Okay. A little hard to do holding it like this, but
like under millionaires and
there's our little weak gospel station. So yeah, I'd say this is working about as good as it's capable of working. Okay, as far as I'm concerned, all we have to do is come up with a battery, and this thing will be ready to go home.
To be their hired guns, and the goal at the end of the day.
And that was me that just touched something on the circuit board that caused all that squealing.
Our family.
Okay, there you go. Thanks for watching, and more to come later. And I've scraped and sanded on both of these battery contacts, and of course they'll never be like new again. But I've got them to at least where they're conductive now. And that's just why you should never leave batteries in equipment that's not being used, and I've been guilty of doing it too. Forget you leave a battery in a transistor radio, and then 2 years later you realize the battery leaked all over the place. But generally speaking, if you're not going to use the radio or the equipment, it's just best to pull the battery, and that way it doesn't leak all over everything, because once these terminals get all corroded up, you can clean them and sand them, but they'll never be as good as they once were. So it's just best to use a little preventative maintenance on the front end and save you a lot of grief later. I remember one time when I was a student at the college, at the local community college, the lady that was in charge of special populations had some type of hearing device, and it was one of those that you could put nickel-cadmium AA batteries in it and plug it into a wall outlet to charge the batteries. Well, she put standard alkaline batteries, or I think it was alkaline. I know it wasn't the correct type. Plugged it in overnight, and whenever she came to work the next day, the batteries had literally exploded inside of the piece of equipment and ruined it. She asked me to fix it, but I told her there's no fixing this. This is going to need a little bit more than a battery contact cleaning. So, yeah, just to be safe, always take the battery out when you're not using the equipment for long periods of time. Alright, there you go. I'm finally done. All I've got to do is speak to the owner and see if he wants to order a battery, or does he want me to order a battery, and then this can go back home.